What's going on, everybody? Kalipus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022. Now before we go any further, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and if you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and my favorite accessories for it. But with that being said, let's get into it. So my first reason to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022 is the large display. Now with this phone, we're getting a 6.82-inch LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, and a 90% screen to body ratio. So despite only being a really basic 720p LCD display, at 6.82 inches, it's definitely a really large display. So if you're consuming a lot of content, even though the resolution and overall image quality isn't going to be amazing, you're still going to get a really good experience here. In addition to this, with an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, we are getting a taller and more narrow form factor than average. So if you're doing something like watching a video in landscape mode, for example, you're going to get a much more immersive experience. And if you're doing something vertically, like scrolling through social media or reading an article, you'll be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. And even aside from the size and dimensions, despite again only being a 720p display, the image does look decently sharp. And even though it's just a regular LCD, keep in mind, TCL did start out primarily making TVs, and they put that same technology into their displays. And you can really tell, in my experience, compared to other phones in the same price range with similar specs, I have found TCL displays to look a little bit better. And in general, for being more of an entry-level phone, the image on this display does look really good. So if you are looking for a more affordable phone, but you want a larger display with a higher quality image, this phone is going to be a great option. My second reason to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022 is the camera. Now with this phone, for the front-facing camera, we got a 13 megapixel camera up here, and on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as actual features go, the TCL 30XL has pretty much everything, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera. So if you're taking a lot of photos and you want a wider variety of features, this is going to be a great phone for you. And this is definitely a nice thing because while having all these features isn't really unheard of in this price range, there are lots of phones like this and even slightly higher end ones that don't have all the features. Sometimes they'll have an ultra wide camera but no macro camera. And even more commonly, they'll have a macro camera but no ultra wide camera, which is definitely disappointing because when you're taking a lot of photos, especially stuff like vacation photos, group photos, pictures of large buildings and stuff like that, an ultra wide camera is a really useful feature. But again, luckily with the TCL 30XL, despite it being a really affordable entry-level phone, we are getting pretty much all the features here. And aside from just having all the features, the photos this phone takes are actually pretty good for what it is. Sure, they're not going to be nearly as good as a flagship phone, for example, but if you're taking photos for something like social media, this phone will absolutely get the job done. My third reason to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022 is the battery. Now with this phone, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery that supports 18 watt fast charging. So first of all, with a 5000 mAh battery, that's pretty much the largest battery you can get in a smartphone, at least in the US market. And this is going to give you great battery life and longevity. So even if you're using your phone decently heavily throughout the day, you're probably still not going to have to charge it until the end. And in addition to this, down the road, as the battery starts to degrade, which all batteries do, you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly with this phone as you would with a phone that has a much smaller battery. So if maybe you have a more mobile lifestyle and you're not really able to charge your phone all day, a phone like the TCL 30XL that has such a large battery is going to be a great choice. And in addition to the battery size, with 18 watt fast charging, the charging speeds on this phone are really good too. So again, if you are in one of those situations where you don't always have a lot of time to charge your phone, the 18 watt fast charging this phone supports, paired with a powerful fast charger, is definitely going to make a huge difference. My fourth reason to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022 is because it has stereo audio. Now this is definitely not something you see in every phone in this price range. In fact, nowadays, for whatever reason, very few of them actually have this. Even some mid-range phones that are double the price of this don't have stereo audio. But luckily, with the TCL 30XL, we are getting stereo audio. And in case you don't know what that means, basically when a phone has stereo audio, sound is going to come out of not only the main speaker, but also the earpiece as well, giving you a much more immersive experience. And although sure, you could always use headphones or a speaker or something like that, there are plenty of situations where it's nice to actually get good audio quality from your phone speaker itself. And luckily, with the TCL 30XL, the audio quality is really good. So if you are in a situation where you're consuming content, maybe you're watching a video for example, and you don't really feel like using your headphones or an external speaker, then you'll be happy to know the audio quality with this phone is still good by itself. But to give you an idea of what it actually sounds like, let me show you a quick sample. So as you can see there, while it's still not the most amazing sound quality in the world, remember after all, it is still just a phone speaker, so it can really only be so good. But in general, compared to a lot of other phones in this price range, and much more expensive phones for that matter, it's definitely nice to see that not only does this phone have stereo audio, but the actual quality of the sound itself is pretty decent. So if you are consuming a lot of content and you want some flexibility in how you're actually able to listen to the audio, getting a phone like this that has stereo audio and pretty good audio quality is going to be a great choice. Now my fifth reason to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022 is the overall design. Now of course, on one hand, obviously this is a little bit more of a subjective kind of thing, and I will admit, this phone does have some characteristics in the design that do make it look a little bit more entry level, like the water drop notch in the front facing camera for example, and it does have a slightly thicker bottom bezel. But in general, other than that, with a 90% screen to body ratio, most of the bezels on this phone are really thin, giving the phone a more sleek, modern kind of look. And even though, again, the rest of the device isn't really unique looking or anything, for being a really entry level phone, not only do I think it looks pretty decent for what it is, but it also feels really high quality as well. A lot of phones nowadays are really just made with cheap plastic, and even though this phone is made entirely of plastic as well, it really doesn't feel cheap at all. The buttons are also pretty sturdy, the phone in general has really good build quality, and it also has a good amount of weight to it too, which is something even a lot of more expensive phones don't have. So in general, if you are looking for a more entry level phone, but you want something that has a pretty good design for what it is, and also has good quality materials as well, then this phone is really going to be a good choice. But those were my 5 reasons to buy the TCL 30XL in 2022. Now honestly, this is a really good phone for what it is, and I do think there are a lot more than 5 reasons to buy it, but of course there are also a lot of reasons why you might not want it. So if you want to learn more about that, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, including my pros and cons video as soon as I finish it. I'm also going to be adding some information about pricing and availability because this is always changing, so again, if you want to learn more about any of that stuff, definitely check out the description. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.